자, 흐름이었습니다. сайн байцгаана уу? Та бүхний өнөөдрийн мэндийг дэвшүүлье. Энэ бүхнийг зохион байгуулсан Hanguk Yabancı Çalışmalar Üni ялангуяа Кингисон багш Монгол Улсын шинжлэх ухааны академи хэл зохиолын хүрээлэн ялангуяа надад бас хэл зүйн хичээл зааж байсан Батирэдүү багштай талархлаа илэрхийлье. Миний өнөөдрийн сэдэв манчинэ яшаан саман битгэр гэж ардын амын зохиол өдөртөж багш маань надад англиар нийлхэл англиар тавихыг зөвшөөрсөн болохоор өнөөдөр нийлхэл англиар тавих асуу байвал монголоор дараа нь тайлбарлах болно. Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today's presentation is about the Manchurian folk tale, Yashan Saman Bitke, and some issues regarding its Mongolian and Turkish translations. Now, Yashan Saman Bitke stands as being a folk narrative. We don't have many folk narratives from the Manchu language. Actually, majority of the corpus consists of military reports, decrees, and such official works. But this one stands as being the sole representative of the real, living, everyday language of the Manchu people. As a folk tale, it represents the language of people. Luckily, the Soviet scholar Grebenshkov had the opportunity to secure some scripts of the tale. It provides a wide range of vocabulary from multiple topics, covering all the way from the daily lives to hunting, military to religion, family relations to state structure. In addition, it also sheds some light on the spoken language, as the spelling of some words are not regular. This means the written language and the spoken language in Manchurian are not one-to-one equivalent, so the written form might be slightly different from the spoken variety. And in some words, we see they are not spelled or written according to the regular written tradition, but rather than reflecting the oral futures. Now, thankfully, a kind of nishanology started to form because the manuscript secured by Grebenshkov has been translated to several languages, including Mongolian, Chinese, Russian, Korean, Japanese, Italian, Romanian, German, English, Hungarian, and recently we have one Turkish translation, and the second one was prepared by me as a part of my PhD study. So, as a folk tale, it's not clear when this tale of a Manchu shaman started to occur. Is not clear. There are some researchers who mentioned that this tale of a shamaness was related among the people of northern Manchuria in the form of a legend or a tale and spread to wider audience. Now, this is not found only among the Manchu-speaking people. It also has some varieties among the other Tungusu societies like Evenk, Orochen, and else, even including a Dabur variant. So this means it's quite a widespread tale, not confined to a small society, which might be a sign that shows the long-standing tradition behind it. And according to Volkova, Evenk variant is different from the Yaşan Zaman Bitki that we have in our hand. Yes, I have just mentioned there are a couple of variants of the Manchu original because Grebenshikov had 3 separate manuscripts, and each manuscript reflects the knowledge of the person, the source person. The last one Grebenshikov acquired was in 1913 when he was visiting Vladivostok, and a person called Dikding brought him a manuscript, and this manuscript was printed in 1961, and actually this is the one that we have used as our source material in our translation. So, as we mentioned, there are something like 16 translations of this text, and from among them, I'd like to mention specifically the Korean translation by Professor Song Bae-kim. He translated Yaşan Zaman Bitki into Korean and published it for the first time. The second publishing came in 2008. And in this second publishing, he mentioned that he acquired a new variant. Recently, Professor Choi Dungen provided a foreword for our translation because I would like to inform you that our translation is in the printing process recently, and very soon we're going to have a new Turkish translation and publication about it. So in the foreword to our book, Professor Choi mentioned that they have 5 manuscripts. Now, in Mongolia, the text was translated as Nishan Otkone Bichik by El Mishik, and it was published for the first time in 1991 to limited copies. It's not easy to find any of the copies these days, but according to the information, my school, National University of Mongolia, has 5 copies of it. And in 2009, Professor Otkontol, my advisor, she added the photographs of the Manchu original, offered it to the public use, together with the scientific transliteration of the above-mentioned original and the original manuscript study, and she specifically pointed at the differences between the spoken and written varieties of the Manchu language. So, about the Turkish translation, but actually the first Turkish translation came in 2016 or 17, but it was based on the work by Novak and Duran. Our Turkish translation was based on the 1913 manuscript, which was acquired by Mr. Grebenshikov, and the translator, myself, have been making translations in the last 29 years, almost up to 30 years, but this is my first translation from Manchurian into Turkish. Okay, I translated it more than twice. This means the translation process began in the class because last year I was taking a class about the Manchu sources, and we specifically studied this text in our classes. We started to make some translations, but of course, one semester was not enough for everything, so it was not concluded. And then, as a preparation, I made a kind of pre-translation. Then, towards the end of 2013, I started the translation all from the scratch and completed it during the New Year. It is not going to be included in my PhD work, but I needed a Turkish translation So I did it. Here I'd like to mention vocabulary because the Turkish people has a nomadic past, so there's a rich vocabulary about animal husbandry, nomadism, hunting, military, and so on, which really have many common points with both Manchurian and Mongolian. I had to use them. In order to use them, I referred to the Orkhon inscriptions from the 8th century, covered the Turpan manuscripts, basically the translation of Golden Light Sutra, which is Altın Yaruk in Turkish and Altın Geril in Mongolian, and the compendium by Kashgari provides an important vocabulary for this. Now, we can provide many examples about this, but I specifically want to mention, for example, Aktmurn in Manchurian might be translated in a variety of ways, but I prefer to translate it as Akyunt, which is more consistent to the classical Turkish. And there's this word Yex. I translated it as Ulburek. This is the special headgear that the shaman people put on their heads during their activity. And Ayankian does not appear in present-day Turkish, but in the classical era, specifically in relation with the Buddhist practices. Kuche Yipar is the proper Turkish translations for the terms. So hence, I refer to classical Turkish quite a lot. Okay, here I'd like to mention the translation between the Altaic languages, because Altaic languages are grammatically almost identical. Almost identical here means there are, of course, some differences, because all of them are independent languages that developed independently. But still, a translation directly from between the Altaic languages produces more consistent results. Now, I'd like to go to the Turkish translation. There are also two Turkish translations of the Secret History of Mongols. So both of them based on Mr. Demdensüren's text. So here on the right-hand side, we see the poetry part from Demdensüren's text. The other one is my text directly based on Demdensüren's text. In the next one, we're going to see the German translation by Heinisch, and then Professor Ahmet Temir's translation. Based on Heinisch's translation, we see that 4 lines becomes 3 lines in German, and it turns into 5 lines in Turkish. Here I'd like to mention that, for example, Hulçoğlu in Mongolian appears as Huladu in the Turkish translation. Apparently, Professor Temir gave the classical spelling of the word without translating. It means harrier in English and Tuygun in Turkish. Professor Temir didn't translate it, but in the footnote, he explained it as crow, which is not appropriate. Harrier and crow are 2 different words. So here I compare my translation to Temir's translation. One is directly from Mongolian into Turkish. The other goes from Mongolian into German, and from German into Turkish. 302, which have similar grammar structure, but one is different, and everything turns into a mess. So during my translation, I made use of the Mongolian translation of Mishik very much because, Turkish and Manchurian had lived in neighborhood for some period. So there is a very peculiar case between the 3 languages. Now, some features of Mongolian stand in geographically right in the middle of the other 2. are similar with that of Turkish and some with that of Manchurian, which is normal. But meanwhile, since Mongolian has some unique features of its own, such features are coming. There are some features that are much more common or similar between Turkish and Manchurian. So this means there's a kind of three-direction relation, all-direction relation between the three languages. It's not only one direction. Okay, so this unique features similar between Turkish and Manchurian but different from Mongolian covers some similar vocabulary as well as syntactic examples. Okay, so, but still there's a long time during which Turkish and Manchurian or Turkish-speaking community and Manchurian-speaking community remained far away from each other, and truly there's not too many studies conducted about Manchurian society, history, whatever, Manchu studies. So Turkish needs some support, and this support is provided by Mongolian. Mongolian helps us very much. I would like to specifically mention the contribution of Mongolian during my study, making this translation from Manchurian into Turkish. And to the end of the work, we added a glossary. This glossary consists of 4 columns. In the first column, we gave the nominative cases of all nouns and infinitive forms of all verbs that appear in the Nishan text. In the second column, we gave the Mongolian correspondence. In the third column, we gave the present-day Turkish equivalents. And in the fourth column, we tried to gather as many as the classical Turkish counterparts for them because all of them are not available. So, but still, I guess they are complete something like up to something like 70%, I guess. And rather than giving a kind of index, we preferred making a glossary because if we had made a kind of index, it would make something like 7,000 pages, which nobody would want to read. So even with this glossary, we have something like 1,350 inputs. It's become a large glossary indeed. So here I'd like to mention two vocabulary examples from the glossary. Okay, one is, now the ordinary drum, the instrument between the 3 languages are different. So it's Manchurian imchin, but this word appears as yimchin throughout the entire text with only one spelling. Mongolian, it is Hanguk, and Turkish, it is Kubruk, but there's one spelling on Bilge Khan's inscription which kind of suggests that it might be read as Kuburga, but as I saw, Kuburga is not very common, so Kubruk should be the correct form. On the other hand, a shaman's drum, which is not an instrument but more like a tool, a device, are similar in 3 of the languages. It is Dungun in Manchurian, Dungur in Mongolian, and Tungur in Turkish, which should have a very long history. The second example is, this is the word about tui. Manchurian, it is sitir. Mongolian, it is sheikh. Turkish, it is sidgu. And these words are not borrowed from each other. They should be from all the primitive ages of the 3 languages. I think this is a very important input for the Altai studies. Okay, Manchurian studies are not ending with this, and we really need contributions from everybody. I'd like to invite young scholars to participate in this journey. I thank you very much for your attention. And Harlan Dolson Talkin